today is similar stuff that we talk about all the time, but like I want to look at things from a numbers perspective as to why this is just a wildly underrated thing to focus and optimize for. And the reason that it is wildly underrated is because this is something that, when done properly and when done in an organized and effective way, it really can make sure that each month begins to be bigger than the next by following these formulas. And I know that sounds like, okay, well, yeah, but it gets stupid. In fact, the math that I'm about to show you is I am creating a toned down version from what it really would be, because if I'll show you what the actual math is versus what it ends up looking like, based on a more conservative version. But the point is, it gets like just absurd. And the reason that it gets absurd is because it's meant to solve your lead problem. So the ridiculous version has no constraints. But if we can get these things right, you don't really have a lead problem any longer, and your big constraints become growth, like infrastructure, team, operations, production. Some of the things that honestly are a little bit, I would say, easier to begin solving for, and also more kind of what I think the average roofing company business owner is more interested in solving for. How can we deliver the best at scale? How can we organize the way that we're um, getting our builds, and how can we organize the customer service and stuff like that? So I'm going to show you a few this first, and we've all seen this slide probably, but I'm going to highlight one specific word. Step one is create opportunities to get invited into new areas. Step two, create opportunities for the neighbors to invite you to inspect their roofs of the people that originally invited you. Step three, get the client's networks to invite you. Step four, repeat. Step four, repeat, is where it starts getting crazy, because this automatically gets you here usually, which gets you here, which gets you here, which gets you here. And it really does create a scenario for you where your business is able to grow in a massive, massive way. And you have this bolted on, it should give you a certain amount of confidence. And the reason it should give you a certain amount of confidence is not just because, oh, you're referral worthy and stuff like that, which I do think that's probably the main place you should drive your confidence. But the main reason is because it will make you safer as you grow. It will allow you to take bigger risks, because there is always going to be a massive amount of upside associated with something working. And in fact, you're creating a scenario where your upside is so big that it almost seems stupid. Like, it really does almost just seem absurd. So as we're looking at this stuff, just to give the quickest of recaps, we're trying to get more jobs in the areas we're working. So let's assume that we're getting the getting invited section figured out elsewhere. First thing we're going to do is have the mail go out around the inspections, send the text somewhat like this: hey, let me know if I can get on your neighbor's roof, essentially. Put door hangers out before the inspection. Remind the homeowner on the door hangers Go see you grab the door hanger, go talk to the people. If the deal's closed, send them other mail just throughout the sales and production process. Send the text message, hey, job starting, let the neighbors know. First thing in the morning, more door hangers, put them up, remind the homeowner that you're there, let them know, hey, let the neighbors know. Throughout the day, see you grab the door hanger, and then get referrals, before and after, last postcard, etc. So that's the very, very high level of this. What we want to look at, though, is how this actually pans out in reality. Because it can feel slow sometimes. Even when it's not, it can feel slow. And I think one of my favorite examples that I talk about often is the double a penny a day example. You have a vehicle to double a penny every single day. Then after a few days, it's still only like 8 cents. But after a month, it's like 5 point something million. And the reason that we want to look at it partially like that is because our days are spread out. Our days are sales cycles sometimes. So if we're looking at how this looks, I'll bring out my trusty dusty whiteboard. Step one is we get a sale. Sale one. Hopefully through that sale, we get at least 3 inspections. Between neighbors and referrals, and then let's say we close one, and then that moves to a sale. And then we continue. So when you look at it like this, it can feel a little less, this feels linear almost, even if it's not. Or it is linear in a way, but the reason that it gets crazy is because we have not just one job that we need to do this with, but multiple. So to generate one sale and then have that sale, that job, get us a few inspections, close one of those and turn it into another sale, a few inspections, etc. It just seems like a long path. But what happens if we start doing this with multiple jobs? So what happens when we have this process, but it's happening up here too? And then maybe we have another one and it's happening up here. And another one and it's happening over here. And each one continues. So if you're looking at this, the reason that this gets so crazy is because each one of these you get a sale, you get a few inspections from the referrals and neighbors, one of those turns into a job, you get a few inspections there, etc. That alone is just the good business. That's just the good old referral based business. That's not a bad scenario. And if you have this set up in a way that's very intentional, then you're never going to go hungry. With that said, the only way to create this to where this is happening over and over on every job is for your business, for you to have these intentional and organized processes set up around it to be able to delegate this. Because in this scenario, you pretty much officially don't have a lead problem. Doesn't mean that you're doing as much work as you want, but that's more of a self-imposed lead problem. In this scenario, you don't have a lead problem. We have an organized way to get leads when we need them. This just might not be fast enough. In fact, this might not be fast enough. So what do we do when we want to pour fuel on the fire? The biggest thing that we all know, okay, if I want to generate leads, what are the things I can do? There's the biggest thing that is the elephant in the room always is run ads. Wow, that's the tiniest little text ever. $64. Okay. There we go. Run ads. That's the thing that we all know we can do in a situation so that we can create more of these entry points. And y'all have heard me or seen me talk about the funnel to flywheel example because it just makes sense. But it also doesn't necessarily like show you how this stuff scales. It really talks about like the theory, but it doesn't like show you, oh, okay, I see this is going to make sure that I never go hungry again. It's just like, okay, that sounds nice. So for anyone that doesn't remember, this is the funnel versus flywheel thing. So this is what we're creating. We want to have our neighborhood marketing, our referral system set up. We want to be referral worthy. We want to have this referral based business. So generally, neighbors, referrals. You could have other entry points of this, like a insurance agent that refers you business or a realtor that refers you business. All great things. A B2B relationship. But in general, this is one of the best quick ways to solve your lead problem. But if you want to really pour fuel on the fire, we need to scale this. The thing is, in order to scale this, we have to have something that cuts the cost because this becomes super expensive or at least difficult to really manage from a cash flow perspective. So we probably need to have something like this going for a little bit before we start spending money here. Otherwise, we're just going to be really tight. Enter this Excel sheet that our private equity friend, William Polly, helped me make that is a little complicated, but we're going to get through it together. My suggestion is each of you at some point, if you want to grow and you want to push, we do need to spend money on ads and Google ads and all those things. If we want to grow, if we really want to be big and we want to speed up time, then we need to create more leads and more opportunities. With that said, this budget right here, which is going to be a common starter budget for someone who's just hitting a million for the first time or in like the 1 to 2 million range, is not a very profitable situation when we're just looking at averages. Cost per lead, let's call it $150. And there's markets where it's crazy high. So there's markets where $150 would be like a dream of a cost per lead for Google ads specifically. But let's look at old Texas and some of these markets like that where there's a little bit of volume and Google seems to be like a little more friendly than other areas. So $150 cost per lead, 60% of those turn into appointments. That's $250 in ad spend per appointment. That on a $3,000 a month marketing budget creates 12 appointments. Your average cost per appointment is around $458. Assuming you're not closing these super well because they're colder leads who are probably comparing you to someone else, let's call it a 20, or you're keeping your sales team busy who's not as good of a closer as you potentially, you're closing them at 25%. If the average revenue per job is 12,000, your gross margin is 4,200. Your average commission, because we have a salesperson running these, is 10%. I know it changes depending on who's running the business, but let's call it a 10% off the top. That's $1,200. Your lead cost per that sale is $1,800.33 for that sale. That's 458 times 4, 25% closing rate. And then you add in the commission, and then that ends up putting your actual, what's called a contribution, which is a new word I learned, which is not net, but it's kind of like after expenses, it's what's left to go pay your overhead on a job. So it's looking at, okay, what are the costs to generate that job? What are the costs to fulfill that job? Before we actually get to your net, what do we have to pay our bills after this job is done? So that's 1,167 per job. If 3 jobs are closed, because we're closing 12 appointments at 25%, that's 3,500 roughly per job or per month on this budget. So you spent 5,500 and we got $3,500 in profit back. That alone is not that bad of a situation. The S&P 500 is like 1%. We're excited about high yield savings account with a 5% interest and all that. So this return, okay, like, so you're saying, give me $5, I give you $5 and then you give me $8 back essentially, or let's say $5.50 and then you give me $9 back. That doesn't sound like a bad deal. With that said, one, a lot of you are already managing cash flow or credit lines poorly. So let's just call a spade a spade. Not all of you, but that's common. Two, the sales cycle is not one day. Generally, you're not getting a call, paying for the lead, taking the call, closing the deal in there, and then collecting the cash the next day. Generally, especially on leads like this that come from Google, it takes some time. So, and if it's insurance, it takes a lot of time for you to get paid in full. In insurance, you're usually going to have more than $12,000 at the end of the day in gross. But if we're looking at this situation, it doesn't actually play out that well because you're not only getting $1,100 total, you're getting $1,100 total over the course of 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. But guess what's due after 30 days? Another $2,500 management fee. Guess what's coming out? Weekly pieces of this ad spend. And we can increase it. Say we want to do $5,000 in ad spend. So that's 5 jobs. So we're getting a little bit better. You went from 1,800 to 1,500. You're taking home 1,500. That's not as bad. So the answer in some cases, if you're just going straight marketing, is spend more. If you're just going straight marketing and you want to make sure you have enough money there's advantages to spending more. And the only advantage isn't, oh, I'll just get more opportunities. Part of the advantage is you're cutting the management fee over the course of every job that you close. So there was times when I ran my marketing agency that I thought, I think I just need to get them to spend more. These $3,000 a month budgets, there's nothing, I can't work with that. That's nothing. And if they tell me, oh, I'm going to spend more as we go and as we see it working, well, it's going to take you 3 months, like 2 months, 1 month, whatever, to get a small amount back. So you're not really, you're in the hole. In fact, I don't think we actually have the math here anymore, but in the $3,000 scenario, it takes you 3 months total. So on the fourth month is the first time that you legitimately are positive on the total amount in versus the total amount that you've gotten back because you're reinvesting. And it's not you get everything back, it's you're a positive $1,500. So the point that I'm making, and I know that this is like a lot of numbers, but it was advertised as money numbers, so sorry about it. The big thing here is as you're getting this stuff organized, like you need to know what are my options, because some of you can spend $300, $400, $500 a day in ad spend. Some of you can do that because you've been stockpiling cash for a long time. Some of you can do that because your revenue justifies a bigger budget. Some of you could do that for a week and then you'd be out of money and it would be a huge gamble. So the point that I'm making is that the advice, hey, go spend more. This is always a gamble. These numbers are assuming you have assuming you're on the lower end of cost per lead at this point in 2025, assuming that your intake process is good and that your keywords and stuff on Google Ads are tight, so you're not getting like a bunch of words that like people calling as thinking you're a competitor or calling for material or what have you. It assumes that you're able to close at least 1 in 4 people, which I know sounds like, oh yeah, I could do that, but you'd be surprised. I'd imagine even if you guys like look at your numbers clearly, it won't be as straightforward and it won't be as good as it seems like it will be. And then it's assuming the average is $12,000, which might be conservative in some markets, might be a little bit giving in others, especially considering you're going to get calls for repairs and stuff too that you have to add in there. It's also assuming that you're selling at least a 35% margin, which I know some of y'all aren't. So the point is, all of this work, all of this math just to get down here, $3,500 in profit. So the simple thing that we want to look at is what if every job got us 3 additional appointments? That's what we do. That's what you hear me talk about over and over again. Because that alone, when you look at it on a singular job, and even in that thing that I shared where it was like, okay, well, what happens if you do it at 5 jobs? It still feels kind of linear. But if every job generated you 3 inspections and you were doing this, then we had the same numbers right here. Your lead cost would be 200 rather than the 1800 between maybe referral fees and some direct mail and stuff like that. Your contribution would go from 1167 to 2800, and you would be able to add at least the next month 8400 in additional profit, which would turn 3 months to wait into 1 month, and we're right all the way back. So every single time that we generated this, we'd have a tail of this. Does this make sense? I know that we're talking Excel, but like, are we seeing what I'm seeing? Do we understand this part? Yes, mostly okay. So the point is, when you don't have all this cost to fulfill and the cost to get a sale, when someone refers you, I'm not going to say it's free, but it's close to free, even when you invest, give them some money back. So it's not a difficult scenario. And that's also assuming that you only are closing these even at 25%. So the amazing thing that we can look at is every job that we close can have another 2,800 tied to it. So if we got 1167 for one job that we closed from Google, then that job resulted in another job, and your total profit for that amount of effort, this is why I say leverage, was actually 3,967. So this is the reason it's pretty awesome. But the thing is, it doesn't stop here because these jobs also can generate more jobs. So this is what that actually plays out to look like. What is this? Which one? Okay, contribution. Yeah. So say we made the 3,500 here. That's the total. But then we got on the back end from these, we generated the referrals. And we spent more money to get this. And then we got this. More money to get this, then we got this. More money to get this, and then we got this. So your total profit is just increasing and increasing and increasing. Look at what happens when you actually, like, imagine if this just created one extra job a month and these jobs didn't have a tail on them. So it was just one. So this one amount invested, the 5,500 creates 3,500 in profit and months of 8,400 because everyone keeps on generating a new job. But each one continues to. So this is what really happens. And it creates a waterfall. Month one, these turn into this, and more jobs, more jobs, more jobs, more jobs, more jobs. But these jobs are starting to turn into more jobs, more jobs, more jobs, more jobs. These are starting to turn into more jobs. These are starting to turn into more jobs. These are starting to turn into more jobs, etc. It gets absolutely insane. This is math that if we like really started breaking it down, it would just get like it would get in like, oh well, that's how you make a $20 billion roofing company. Reality is there's a lot of factors that go into making sure you're able to scale this. A ton. As we do it, we want to make sure that tail on every single project we do. So how can we make sure that every time we invest whatever in marketing, $3,000 in ad spend, how can we make sure that any job that results from that ad spend creates another job? Because it doesn't just stop at doubling your sales. Another way to look at it is if you did 3 jobs this month, and that's like your baseline from your marketing, and then you do another 3 job because that's your baseline, but now these 3 jobs turned into another 3 the next month, and you still have your baseline, and then these turned into another 3. Like, do you see how this stuff gets just insane? Because if we can look at this same way, like, okay, this is 3 jobs profit. Those 3 jobs turn into another 3 jobs because this is our baseline, and then we get more here, and then we get more here, and here, and here, and here, and here, and here, and here. It gets absolutely wild how this stuff starts stacking up. So the point that I'm making is, as we're looking at this stuff, as we're getting organized on how we want to really like attack the year, it's not this or that. It's not, oh, well, let's do some, I don't want to do marketing. I don't want to run ads. I want to get jobs by just being a good and referral worthy business. That's fine. But you have a vehicle. When you have a predictable way to get referrals and every customer is worth multiple, and there's a tail on every job you do that creates more jobs and more jobs and more jobs, then you're going to be in a situation where your business is continuing to grow every single month. And it's not just doubling your sales one month, it's doubling each cycle over and over and over and over and over. And your baseline might not change. You might get naturally from your ads that you're spending the same amount of money on. You don't need to scale that because that can just be like a catalyst to grow. You have a way to spread the fire. It doesn't just dim out the moment you stop trying to do it. So as you're doing that and as you're looking at how this stuff really like can grow your business, the reason this stuff is so powerful is because if you can operationalize turning one job into multiple, and then those multiple are turning into multiple, and those multiples are turning into more multiples, etc. And then you spend money on ads after you have that operationalized, your business is going to, you have a lever, you have so much leverage in your marketing, it's insane. Very, very, very quickly, your biggest constraint is going to be team and operations and things like that. But that's when you push. And you don't have to. That's the thing. Once you get this stuff in place, you're always going to be growing naturally. Like you will have organic growth ready to go. You're going to be able to push because naturally you're going to increase your baseline just as longer you've been in business, and you're going to have more and more opportunities and it's going to grow. But if you want to look at, okay, I just took control of as many inputs as I could. And in doing that, I was able to create a scenario where I built a very predictable way to turn one job into the next and into the next and into the next. Now you can look at Google Ads as something that actually gives you more control rather than less, because historically, if you put money into Google Ads, you're mostly just gambling, because the gamble is not will it work, it's am I going to be profitable at the amount of money that this is costing me for the most part. And that question is a valid question, because if the numbers I showed you were a little worse, say it was $200 cost per conversion or $250 cost per conversion, and you still had that 60% lead to appointment rate, then all of a sudden your cost per appointment in ad spend before you factor in management fee is huge. And that really is like how reality looks in a ton of markets. And in 2025, it's just getting harder. Google's updated a lot of things. I was just on a call with someone who's very good at marketing, and I saw and noticed that I was able to look into an ad account that's spending a lot of money, and the guy was doing everything he could do, everything he should do. They had a big budget. They were spending $500 a day, and things were working, but the cost per conversion was like $360 something essentially. And that's fine. But if you look, like, you have to consider a lot of these factors. How long does it take to collect the cash? How are you closing these people? When you sell these people, how much is the average revenue? Are there repairs mixed in with these roofs? No, you shouldn't. Uh, the paid marketing's good. The point is we just need to rush and hustle to get some of these neighborhood marketing strategies set up, because once they're set up, it will get crazy, because it won't hardly matter how much that one job costs to generate. It's just a way to get you a tail of jobs. Going back to the screen share, as I was showing you this, there we go. We look at this scenario. Do we care that much how we got this one sale? What if we went negative on this one sale? So say we were negative $1,000 here. But then we got 2,800 here, and then 2,800 here, etc. All in, that's a pretty good number. It still is going to be hard. Like, you have to figure out how to manage your cash flow here. Like, this is not easy. This part is a luxury. So in order to go negative on a job, or even in order to go lower than you're used to going on a job, and for it to still, like, if you paid for a job and then you made less profit on the job that you paid for, we have to make sure that it has a tail. We have to make sure that it's continuing to move this way. Brian, I don't trust you with your mouse for one bit. I trust you less with this mouse than anyone. I see your name. I see you trying to figure out how to draw. Um, uh-oh. I'm done. Sorry. Brian's gonna draw a penis on the screen. So I'm confident that's what he was trying to do. So the big thing that you want to look at is, do I have that process? And if you don't have that process, then you can make it really quickly. It doesn't mean you need to stop your momentum elsewhere. It means that you need to be in more of a hurry to get some of these things in place. And I'm not saying that like to put this false pressure on anyone. I'm saying this because it's the biggest growth opportunity you have. In fact, it's like it's like you're trying to figure out like how, if you're like on skis and you're trying to figure out how can I go fast down the mountain, and then you got in a line and you didn't know how to turn, so you just were forced to learn how to go fast, and maybe you fell and ate crap, but maybe you were like, it was too late by then, you already went off in the black and you had to figure out how to go fast. It was sink or swim. That's not a terrible situation. That's how a lot of people learn, trial by fire. With that being said, it's one of those situations where we do need to get set up and get organized so that we can at least begin to start making those tails. And now our process is going to make this predictable because we're having as many of the inputs as we can to control. And that's something that like is unique to marketing and growth strategies. That's why door knocking, honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that door knocking could damage your reputation potentially and people can be pissed, and it can be like, if it wasn't for that, door knocking would be probably the best way to get new jobs. It would beat Google, it would beat paid ads, it would beat SEO, it would beat all these things. If you're just talking about creating a business that's reliable and predictable, the cost is just time. You can hire, you can use capital to leverage someone else's time. They can knock doors for you. And then you can really be careful and control exactly how many doors they're knocking, what they're saying at the door, how they're quoting. Like, you have control of a lot more variables than you do with Google ads or Facebook ads or any of those things. because there's not some wall of unknown in between, what's called the algorithm. And you're not having to wait for someone to come to you. You get to go to them, and all they have to do is answer their door. Now, the reason that I don't think door knocking can or should be like the growth strategy in 2025, just like in its simplest form, is because honestly, everything's too public now. So you might be so polite and you might be a great, great person, but you might get seen on a Ring doorbell camera. Someone might talk crap about you in a Facebook group, and then three other people who saw you on the Ring doorbell camera that never even got a chance to interact with you might be like, yeah. And then some other person might be, someone came by my house the other day and I thought they were a door knocker, but they stole a package from me. And then they could be like, oh yeah, like that happened. Like, and all of a sudden you're like mixed with like it's so easy for it to get out of hand. And because of that, I just think like it's kind of playing with fire at certain points. Now, do I think you should not door knock at all? No, I think there's a time and place that door knocking makes sense. With that said, I think you should be careful about how you do it. And I also think that it's going to be harder and harder and harder and harder and harder. And that's just something we have to be aware of and know. So as you're as you're figuring out how to take this information and actually turn it into action, the biggest thing, starting point, the thing that I will say, go back to what's the most important part, is giving a great experience that merits a referral and merits the neighbors, like helps the neighbors see, okay, that is the contractor that I can and should go with. Once you have that part down, then we organize how you're going to interact with those people and how you're going to get the most attention on the fact that you're referral worthy and you have all these reasons that people should contact you. And then we need to control, okay, how can we get maximum attention there? And then how can we get people to talk about us in that regard? And then how can we make sure that we're doing these things over and over and over again? How can we make sure this isn't just a little sprint? This isn't just a little quick thing we do, but instead it's something that happens every single project, every single job. How can we take out the human error as much as possible? Systematize, automate, delegate, enforce, all the fun words. But that's how you do it. And then as you have that in place, once you do have that in place, honestly, you can spend whatever you want on marketing. You could go in the hole $3,000 to acquire a customer. Like in the hole. Because that one customer is going to turn into 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 over the course of like how you really see it branch out and play out. And that's the way that you're going to be able to crush it. That's why if you know Perimeter Roofing, for instance, huge company, grew a lot, almost all door knocking. The reason that they were able to grow so much is because whenever they got in a neighborhood, they worked it so hard that like, and it was like 5 of them like would end up on one roof sometimes, which I know sounds crazy, but like they would just be all over that neighborhood to where there was no chance that someone is going to miss them. And because of that, and they did it like by brute force, and I'm not saying that like critically, I'm saying that honestly, like with admiration, but they just did it by brute force. And because of that, they were able to just dominate every single little area that they go in. And they were able to recruit salespeople, and they are salespeople. The big thing, dominate, go, go, go. And they're good at insurance and there's stuff like that. But like the point is really, as you get this stuff organized, as you get this stuff set up, you can elegantly scale. You can do this and look at how can I make sure that my growth and my sales is no longer a constraint. Because I'd imagine if you've been in business for a while, you're tired of not having, you're tired of your big constraint being leads and not enough work. Not to say that it hurts to be there, but if you wanted to grow, you don't necessarily even know exactly what the best way to do it is because all your business comes in just in this organic, oh yeah. But what we can do is get this stuff organized, understand the inputs, and then scale it. And once we scale it and put some of these, like put some oomph behind it with ads and scaling of the marketing and stuff like that, and making sure we have the right team in place, making sure that we're truly just everywhere. Once we push in that regard, then we're unstoppable because we can spend the same $3,000 a month or $5,000, and that $5,000 will get us more and more and more and more revenue every month without having to change the amount that you're putting in, which turns it into a little bit more of a control and a constant. Or we can scale it and just see what happens when we go from 5,000 a month to 6,000 a month to 10,000 a month to 15,000 a month. And then market size becomes one of the biggest things. But if you go spend $15,000 a month in ad spend today and you don't have these things in place, you probably will get 15 jobs, 10 jobs, 15 jobs. Maybe a little less, maybe a little more. If you're in certain markets, you'll probably get less. But then there's cost to fulfill. Then you have to wait for those to go. Like it doesn't necessarily just equal money in the bank. In fact, that amount that you're floating usually is something that you need to have covered the amount that you aggressively spent in marketing. So that's the game. You got to get this stuff organized. You got to create a scenario where you know and with confidence can say, this is going to happen. Every job leading more appointments, leading to more jobs. We have to create a scenario where we know this is going to happen. Once we know this is going to happen, then we need to create more of these dominoes. The best way to create more of these dominoes is generally going to be like there's the organic ways, just building a brand, slowly increasing your baseline day by day, some SEO. I'm all about those things, and I think everyone should be doing those. But if you want to go hard, run ads. And once you go hard and once you run ads and you have this in place, like you can spend whatever you want. Like as long as you have the cash to front that same 90 days or so that you would have anyways before profitability and before you really, really, really started like coming out in the positive, as long as you have enough cash to front that, you can very confidently start scaling these. But people try to do it in the wrong order. People try to just go straight for the ads or straight for the SEO, that they have to wait even longer for it to work, or straight for certain things that honestly like are not the reason that you're able to grow and push, and they're different reasons than what you've been doing to grow. They're different types of jobs, they're different sales processes, they're different, they're not the same types of leads that you're used to. And because of that, it's just this start and stop and start and stop and start and stop. And it's just not as profitable as you think. Is the juice worth the squeeze? I don't personally want to wait 90 days for $1,500 only. Like, especially when that $1,500 is going to cover expenses and stuff too. It's not even like my net. So we just want to make sure that we're thinking through these things clearly. And I know that some of these numbers and stuff, you're like, okay, Brad, that was confusing. But the point is, it waterfalls. Every opportunity continues to create more opportunities. So one turns to two. Those two more each turn into two more. So we've got four now. Those four more each turn into another. So as this grows and as this scales, like it creates this web that never stops. So do not stop. As you're looking at this, as you're growing, as you're thinking through what can I do today to grow my business, sometimes we need sales today. And there's activities and there's actions that you should do to kind of create those scenarios. But do not doubt the path of trying to be a referral worthy business and then try to operationalize how you're getting referrals and how you're getting more opportunities around jobs or as a result of jobs you're doing. Because if you can get this right, it is one of the biggest unlocks of growth that you can have, because you can legitimately finance any acquisition that you need. You pay for a job, you could go backwards to pay for it easily because you no longer have to look at one job in just a silo. You have the luxury that other people don't, where one job you can confidently say is worth multiple. But you can only confidently say that if you know how and why it's happening, and it's happening in a way that is a result of things you're doing. So you can't have that confidence, that swagger, that let's make a big play, let's make a big bet if you don't have something to hedge it against. I forget, I saw like a reel recently, but I knew this already. Mattress Mac, some of y'all might know him. He bets a lot of his money on sports betting, and it seems like he's just a degenerate, but everything is hedged. So he's also at the same time that he's betting $10 million on the Super Bowl. He's also saying, running this promotion, everyone who buys a couch for the next 3 months, if the person that I am betting for loses, then you can all get your money for free. Or opposite, sorry. So he bets on the downside. So the point is, he's making money either way. He's pushing his sales or he's getting the payout from Vegas. And the reason I'm giving that example is because he is making what seems like a very risky decision, but he has hedged it against something that he has control, his world, which is selling mattresses and selling furniture and selling this. And he has enough revenue and he can promote hard enough to where he's able to sell $10 million easy. So the point is, as you're making these bets in business, we need to make sure that we have something that will actually allow the bet to make sense, to work out. We have to be able to essentially count cards. And the best way to do that, in my opinion, is, hey, let's make the same bets that other people are making, except let's hedge it with these neighborhood marketing referral strategies. And our reward and our payout is going to be massive. In worst case scenario, if something just didn't really work, but you're not actually going to be like out the money because okay, we have a way to turn one job into multiple. It's worth 1,000 to them, it's worth 10,000 to me. I'm not that worried. So I hope this was valuable. I hope this kind of helped you think through like what this looks like from a math perspective within your business. I know the waterfall example was kind of crazy, but the point is if every job is turning into another, then that continues in a way where it just becomes like silly. Every unit you get to duplicate and double that same unit minus your like initial principal. So, and baseline is what I call principal usually. So, as you're doing this, just remember like this is it: the order, leverage, leads, team, processes, or processes, team, scale. So, scale is the final step, but we can get there pretty quick once we have these things in place and once we have a team who are able to do it so that when we scale, we don't get overwhelmed and have to just like ruin our lives by running leads all day, which honestly, I think Kevin had a little bit of a taste of that with the storm and said it was fun for about 30 minutes. So it's not something that you really want to have to do. You don't want scaling or growing to just become like this new nightmare. You want it to be something that's exciting and fun. The way to do that is to doing these things in the right order. And as a reminder, in my opinion, the right order is whatever. It's not pulling up. Leverage, leverage, leads, basically like solve your leverage problem, make sure you're getting more out of what you're doing. Two, solve your leads problem. Know how to go get into new areas, know how to get into new neighborhoods, not in some fancy, complicated way. Just have some ways to create little bursts. Three, make sure everything that you just did was processed, like is documented and organized so that you can delegate it to a team and build a team up so that you can scale. So if you follow that path, you're going to make sure that your business doesn't suck as you grow. It's not going to just be this like miserable thing as you're scaling. There's going to be troubles, but it's not going to be quite as difficult logistically if you just get that stuff right. So talk soon. I appreciate you guys. I'll see you tomorrow, Kevin. Kobe, I'll see you Thursday. Later.